And I got involved in all of this as an environmentalist. I'd been an environmentalist when I lived back in Ohio and started getting involved in issues regarding strip mines when I found out that a new strip mine was going to go in and its eastern boundary was going to be, or its western boundary actually, going to be my east fence. It was going to be a 1,000-acre mine, and it was going to totally change the land that I decided to live in as sort of a relic of the 60s back to the lander. We had a little farm out there. My wife and I made custom knives. I was a craftsman, and Athens, Ohio is quite a crafts community. And we were there with a bunch of other folks who had moved back out into the country and were raising gardens and living off the land to a degree and just enjoying being out in rural Ohio. Well, we fought that battle, came west. We both swore we weren't going to get that involved in environmental issues anymore, and got to Flagstaff and ended up in the Sierra Club almost immediately. I ended up being the outings chair for the local Sierra Club, figuring that'd be a good way to get to know the country. I got involved in issues, wilderness issues at first, and then after we had the 1984 wilderness bill passed, which incidentally got designated as wilderness much of the land around where I live today in Sedona, Arizona. I can look out a window and see some of the wilderness areas that I created. But anyway, helped create, actually. I was the coordinator for the wilderness effort in this part of the state. But after that we got that passed through Congress, I get involved in predator issues, and being involved in predator issues in the West means being involved with ranchers, because one of the things we wanted to change was what ranchers could do to protect their livestock from predators like mountain lions. So we ended up having some dust-ups, arguing with ranchers. They were on the other side of the issue, and some friends of mine, some other people in the environmental movement, decided to try to lower the level of conflict so that they could achieve some of their other goals. One lady wanted to reintroduce wolves into the Southwest, and she was afraid that the battle we were having over predator issues in general, and mostly mountain lions, I formed a group called Mountain Lions Unlimited, was going to just polarize the state so much that she'd never be able to see her goal achieved of reintroducing wolves. So she got together with a lady from the ranching community, a young lady that she knew, who was trained in facilitation. And they decided to have a facilitated meeting between ranchers and environmentalists, and they both invited quite a few from both communities. I think, well, I don't know, 80, I heard, ranchers got invitations to this, and maybe not that many, but quite a few environmentalists, and of each of us, 6 of us showed up, 6 ranchers and 6 environmentalists. We got together, we started talking about the lady who was acting as a facilitator says, well, you know, you're fighting because you have a vision of the land as you want it to be. What is that vision? What do you want the land to look like? What do you want it to smell like, to feel like when you walk across it? What do you want it to be? And the ranchers and the enviros started saying what they wanted the land to be, started saying goals. And we were really surprised to find out that we all wanted most of the same things. I had a number of things that I wanted to mention, and ranchers were beating me to it and saying things like, you know, healthy communities of wildlife. So one rancher even said a healthy population of predators. He was corrected by another rancher that said, but maybe not too healthy. So we were really surprised to find that even though we were really at odds, that we wanted so many of the same things, and we decided to keep on meeting and just see where this could all go. The ones of us who showed up from both communities weren't typical, I found out later, because we would, I knew a number of environmentalists who wouldn't even walk into a room with a rancher unless there was some moderator there, and it was a political situation and that sort of thing. So we ended up in meetings first in a carport in Phoenix and then later on the land as this slide shows. This is one of our get-togethers. We later called our group the 6-6 group. This is one that was interesting, and I took a photo of it because if you notice, the rancher here is wearing a gun. He was that was not typical by any means. I guess he didn't know what to expect. But there were, the bunch of people here that identified themselves as Earth Firsters and stuff, and we got together, and we went out and visited the ranchers that we met, started talking about what they were doing on the land, so it all sounded interesting to us, so we decided to go out and take a look. It's because this is one of our get-togethers where we had the cards out, and we were setting goals, and we were talking about what we wanted and writing them down and taking them home with us later on as we got somebody to copy them onto a computer sheet and all that stuff. And this is where we were discovering the ground, so to speak, that we had in common, the things that we all wanted. So we went out and started visiting some of the ranches that the ranchers who came to the first 6-6 meeting told us about, so that they owned, that they bragged about what they were doing because they were really proud of it. And this is one of those ranches, and this was where a fellow was using something that, well, I had heard about one other time. I heard about a few other times. But this is called holistic management. This is a ranch that was practicing some of the things that Alan Savory and Holistic Management International, which had a different name at that time, I don't remember what it was, talked about, using animals as a tool to make the land healthy. I remember I talked about that one other time at a demonstration up near the Grand Canyon that I was part of, along with Dave Foreman, the founder of Earth First, and he mentioned this whole idea of holistic management, and he compared it to a cult, and he was talking about getting all of us together to demonstrate in front of one of these meetings or one of Alan Savory's talks, and where we were all going to get together and picket outside for a while, then we're all going to burn our cowboy hats. This is not too long after the bra burning things that some women's libbers were doing, so we were going to burn our cowboy hats instead. But in any case, we went down to see what this fellow, Rukin Jelks, was practicing on his ranch, and I remember we visited a preserve that was right next door to this, and you could see the sides of the soles of our shoes while we stood on the preserve, and then we came over onto this ranch, and you can see just how wonderful and healthy the grass is. All that grass grew that year, just in the year before we got there, because this had been grazed rather heavily, because that was one of the ways that Rukin practiced his grazing. He moved his animals around the ranch like nature moves her herd animals in big herds. They eat for a while and then they move on, because they're either pressed by predators or they're looking for more fresh feed, or they want to get away from places that they've soiled. So we went out and we started looking at these places, and I remember being blown away, because the fellow was talking about how the land worked. And so far as I knew as an environmentalist, the land worked according to political models. If it was preserved, it was healthy, that sort of thing. And another thing that came out in some of these meetings that we went to is people came and talked about actually using cattle to restore land that had been really damaged. And among those at one of the meetings we heard about the sister of the lady who was our facilitator, Tommy Martin, at that first meeting. Her sister, whose name was Jerry Tipton, married to a fellow named Tony Tipton, has used cows to restore a gold mine site in Nevada. So I had to go see that. How do I thought you only use cows to destroy grasslands, not to restore them or recreate them. So I went up and looked, and this is what the mine looked like when it was before they started their project. It had been restored once mechanically, actually, and even had got bond release, but it had deteriorated rather quickly. What you see on the right side of this photo is, it looks like there's grass growing there, but those are actually just leaves of hay that the Tiptons have thrown down on the side of this. And you can see here, you can see the cattle, and if you look closely, you can see the hay wagon at the top of the slope, and they're throwing bales of hay down over the side of this slope on this gold mine. And the cattle, the seeds have already been spread here, grass seeds. The cattle are out there, they're eating the hay, they're stomping in the seeds, they're fertilizing the whole mixture, and that's how the process works. Here's a close-up of Jerry Tipton. You can't see the seeds, but you can see the hay, and of course you can see the cattle as they till all of this in. Yeah. And it only took about a couple of weeks. to get all this done, to treat this area. It was about 10 acres or so. And this is what it looked like the next spring, 8 months after the restoration, after about, I think they got 6 inches of moisture, as I understand it, that winter. And you could see the grasses sprouting up all over the front of that had been barren for years. And in the little inset off to the right, you can see what that grass looked like at the end of the summer growing season as it cured out. This was about 1 year after the restoration. And as I understand it, this devastated mine site actually outproduced some of these ranchers' neighbors' hayfields.